Good morning, afternoon, evening. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to be continuing with our series. I have the same patient every time I come to work, and he died 2 years ago. Part 3. Now, if you haven't checked out the last 2 parts, you might want to go ahead, hop off here, and jump back over and do that. I will give you a warning. Some of the stories that I read do have foul language within them. I try to work around that as best I can, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And as always, we will be publishing new parts every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. All right, let's dive right in. I'm almost certain that this is not part of my job description. I look at the crematory in front of me that now has room 407 taped to the side of it. As much as I don't want to, I have a feeling in my gut that if I don't do this, I'll never be free. I glance over my shoulder to make sure that the bed is in the doorway has stayed still. Luckily, it remains in the same position I left it in. My focus goes back to what's in front of me. How am I even supposed to go about this? Do I just toss him in there and turn on the machine? Something about this doesn't sit right with me. Even though I've been tortured for 2 whole years, I still feel like something is wrong about just throwing him in and leaving. The loud clank of the air conditioning turning on jolts me out of my sympathetic haze. I need to do this, not just for me, but perhaps maybe his soul will get some closure as well and finally move on. I open the door to the crematory and glance inside. There's a dusty old metal sheet that has been placed on rollers so it can slide out. I walk back to the bed in the doorway and bring it as close as I can to the metal sheet. My only real source of lighting is my phone, which I am forced to place nearby to help brighten the room. I begin sliding him using the sheets underneath into the crematory. With each slide, I hold my breath and pray he doesn't move or grab for me. The sound of his body dragging along the metal echoes throughout the room with every pull. It takes me a couple minutes to drag his corpse onto the metal sheet. Because of the darkness of the room, I fail to notice that the corner of his cover has become caught on an edge of the crematory. With the final pull, his body flies inside, his sheet all the while remaining stuck. His face now sits in the small window of lighting provided by my phone. I stare into his cold, milky blue eyes for what feels like an eternity. Then I'm drawn to his shriveled lips, covered in dried blood that had leaked from his nose. His mouth is in a perpetual scream, showing his rotting teeth and decaying tongue. It takes every bit of courage I have not to scream and run away instantly. I slam the door with him inside and turn the lock quickly. I take a deep breath and am flooded with memories now triggered by seeing his face for the first time in 2 years. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I can still feel what it felt like giving him compressions on his chest as he gasped for air, begging for me to not let him die. The warm feeling of his blood dripping on my gloves as I tried to stop the bleeding. I remember the voices of the doctors questioning me as to why he had gotten blood thinners when he was already at risk for massive bleeding. Deep down, inside, I know I am the reason why he died. My negligence led to his demise, and there was no other way to put it. But that was in the past, and now it would do me no good to dwell on previous mistakes. I get back control of my mind and remind myself of what I need to be doing. I look into the small window that is on the crematory for one last time. The hair on the back of my neck stands up as I realize there are a pair of eyes staring back at me through it. More specifically, those same cold, dead eyes I had just seen. I quickly stumble backwards as a giant thump erupts from the metal door. He's trying to get out. Another massive sound as he slams his head into the door. For the first time thus far, I'm finally forced to let out a scream. "Why won't you leave me alone?" I yell in a weird mixture of fear and frustration. Luckily, the door stays shut even though there is now continuous pounding. I don't have time to sit here and let him try to escape. I need to end this now. I scramble towards my phone and use it to light the control panel on the side of the crematory. Ignoring the sounds coming from inside, I manage to find the button. My now trembling hands reach for it and pause, just before pushing. "I'm sorry," I whisper as I press down, backing up slowly as the machine starts to whir to life. I stand still and watch as the machine starts to heat up to blistering degrees. The pounding inside reaches a fever pitch and then immediately stops. After 2 long, terrible years, it is finally over. A wave of relief washes over me as I feel tears of happiness well up in the corners of my eyes. I gather my thoughts and focus my breathing, trying to return back to my normal self before I return to the floor. I still have a couple hours left on my shift, maybe less depending on how long this adventure took. I close the door to the morgue and make my way back to the elevator, relishing in my newfound sense of happiness. As I press the button to open the doors, I hear a creak echo through the hallway, coming from where I had just left. I glance at my phone in my hand and pause. 4:07 a.m. I feel my heart immediately kick into overdrive as I am flooded with adrenaline. The elevator doors open and I rush in, rapidly turning around to see what that sound was. At the end of the hall, where I had just closed the door to the morgue, stands not one, but 2 shrouded figures, both covered in white sheets. They move slowly, dragging their feet with each step, as if moving through quicksand. I begin frantically pushing the button to close the doors faster, all to no avail. These hospital elevators have notoriously slow closing elevator doors, and sometimes can take ages to finally shut. I'm now stuck in a perplexing situation as I have nowhere to run, unless I want to run directly at them. They make a surprising amount of ground on me and are now no less than 15 feet away from the elevator. I hear the grind of the doors as they slowly start to close, but it's still not fast enough. I keep on pressing the button at a panicked speed and can now almost no longer see them through the crack of the doors. Right before the 2 doors connect, a pale hand shoots in between them, triggering the safety mechanism that opens the elevator. I back up into the far corner of the elevator as they now walk inside, the doors slowly sliding closed behind them. I'm now trapped. I slink to my knees and huddle in a huddled mess as they slowly continue moving toward me. Never in my life have I felt this amount of fear, hopelessness, and sadness bundled into one. I can feel my grip on reality and control of my mind start to slip as they approach with each step. The one that had managed to open the elevator door before it closed now remained still, with the other approaching at the same speed. It somehow felt different, less familiar. Nevertheless, it still maintained the same grip of pure fear and terror that I was accustomed to knowing. Now standing directly in front of me, it reached down and toward my face, causing me to flinch and close my eyes. I feel the iciness of skin as the fingers begin to caress my face. I'm so stricken with fear that all I can do is maintain my same position and hold in my whimpers of fear. 4th floor reached, an electronic voice says, breaking the feeling that was previously on my face. My eyes snap open to see the elevator doors opening, with nothing else in sight. I scrambled to my feet and placed my hand to my face, immediately feeling that it was noticeably colder where I had just been touched. I hurriedly make my way back to the nursing station and gather my things. I spot my charge nurse and tell her that I need to go home immediately, as it's an emergency. She looks at me, somewhat amused and somewhat surprised, and says, "Well, that's fine, but it's nearly 7 a.m. anyway. If you had an emergency, you could have left sooner." Normally, I would have questioned her or been shocked to hear that almost 3 hours had passed without me knowing it. But at this point in time, I just needed to leave and get out of that place. I'm now at my wit's end and genuinely concerned if I stay here any further that I will legitimately be in danger. I take the stairs on the way out because at this very moment, the thought of taking an elevator just might cause my heart to stop. I'm relieved as I finally am able to make it outside and take a deep breath of fresh air. I make it to my car and sit inside, completely exhausted from whatever the hell just happened to me for the last couple hours. As I drive away, I look in the rearview window of my car and notice that people are beginning to wake up and turn their lights on. By now, I know exactly where that haunted room is, even looking in a mirror. For the first time in 2 years, it remains dark. I take a deep breath and allow myself to calmly exhale. Maybe, just maybe, I'm finally free of this. And that is all for our story time tonight. As always, thank you all again for tuning in. And once again, as always, we will be publishing new parts every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. So keep an eye out for those. And as always, sweet dreams.